Hello class, how are you? This is your instructor, Alan Severos for Small Business Management Week 2. Welcome to Week 2. This series of video and this week we will be focusing on organizational planning. Now what I mean by organizational planning is how the business is structured. When the business is set up, the entity has to assign itself a business structure. And the structures we will be talking about are sole proprietorship, partnership, or corporation. One thing I like to discuss before I get into business structures is that there is no uniform federal law on how a business is set up. There is a set of structures that are uniformly accepted throughout the United States, but it's up to the individual states to incorporate their own laws in regulating the different types of businesses that may operate in their state. There is no federal code. However, it is recommended that the states adapt what is called a model business code. Okay, again, it is recommended, but it's not required. Now, in setting up a business organization, one thing to consider is who will be on the management team. This can be made up of supervisors, non-supervisory personnel, or managers. The one thing we see when selecting a management team is to try to have what is known as expanding your social network. That is to try to increase your social capital by having diversity on your management team. There's various types of diversities. There's diversity of age, there's diversity of ethnicity, there's diversity of skills. That's most important. Okay. This is something that we're seeing funeral homes incorporate more and more across the United States. As they start to develop their markets, it's very important that they hire diverse individuals who can appeal to certain organizations, okay, or certain groups with certain local customs that the funeral home owner may not be aware of. And that's called increasing your social network. Okay. Now, regardless of the type of business you choose, here are some basic startup steps. There are serious steps that you have to go through when starting a business. The first is you need to register the business with the state, and that's usually through the Secretary of State. You would need a business or occupancy license, which is by state, city, or municipality. You also will need a business name, and that name has to be registered by the state. In terms of most names, if the name does not have the name of the owner in it, you usually have to come up with what is known as a fictitious name, okay, or a trade name, or a DBA, which is doing business as. Okay, and you also need to record this name with the Secretary of State. What they would do is they would do a name search to make sure the name is not being utilized. Most cases, a lot of names are, so that's why you have to have a DBA. Trademarks, which we will get into a little more as we go through the course. Now, if you notice on the background, you'll see GoDaddy. Now, GoDaddy is a website that came up on the scene during the Super Bowl ads. I believe was the first time I ever saw it a couple of years ago. Had no idea what it was. What this is, GoDaddy is an organization that registers domain names for your website. So if you have a funeral home, you would want to have a domain name that mirrors the funeral home. For example, if it's ABC Funeral Home, you may want www.abc.com as your domain name. Your email addresses can have abc.com. Your website can be abc.com. Everything affiliated with your brand can be associated in that domain name. GoDaddy is the organization that where you would register the domain name. Okay. Regardless of the type of business structure, it is important to show the financial separation of the business and the owner. It is important to show that the finances of the business is not being commingled with the finances of the owner. We will return to this topic later. Now, there are 4 P's in which I'd like to discuss very briefly. The first one is protection. We would like to provide the business owner with protection. Also, it looks professional and it shows that we are prepared to do business. And we want to provide the business owner purchasing power so we can set up checking accounts and business credit cards that are separate from the owner's personal checking account and credit cards. Lastly, it is important for a business, when required, to set up what is known as the EIN, or Employer Identification Number. Simply stated, it is a social security number for the business. It is used for tax purposes. It's used as the business identification of the business entity or as an employer. This concludes our first video discussing the number of steps virtually all businesses must go through to set up a business entity. In the next series of videos, we will be looking at the 3 primary business structures: proprietorship, partnership, and corporation.